Hello everyone, my name is Fred Holmes, owner of Frederick Holmes and Company Gallery here in Seattle, Washington. Today we're here going to have a nice intimate little conversation with John Avendano. The artist has most recently joined the gallery stable, and I'm very, very proud to represent John's work. He's an extraordinary painter. John, welcome to the gallery.
Thank you so much, Frederick.
You're very welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your origins. As I understand it, you grew up in LA. Your mother was an artist, your brothers were artists as well. Your father, on the other hand, was on a completely opposite side of the brain. He was an engineer, right? And you have an illustrious member in your family, Jose Orozco.
That's right. That's correct. As a kid, I would always listen to my mother while she painted, and she would tell me the history and the connections with Orozco. But I was too young to realize who that was until much later when I did my studies in arts, and I was pretty amazed about the history, and it explained a lot about our family and most importantly about me.
Yeah, well, it's in your DNA now, right?
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. So that was a remarkable thing, but my mom died when I was 13, so it kind of like left my mind as time went. So I was really happy to actually find out more.
Now, for our viewers, let me just briefly explain who Jose Orozco was. He was one of the three Mexican muralists. They were known as basically the three giants of Mexico during the period of the early 20th century, along with the others, Diego Rivera and David Siqueiros. So that's really quite an important member to have in your family.
Absolutely. And it did fulfill a lot of my mother's needs as far as her own creativity. And I saw that even up to the time that she died. She was still drawing and painting. And I believe that was around 72 or 73.
Wow.
Something like that. So that was a long time ago.
So you ultimately, as you grew up, became part of the LA art scene of the late 70s and early 80s, right?
That's right.
What was that like?
It was great because we had and it grew. I started with about 6 artists, and it grew to the last show I had in LA. We had about 26 artists in the show.
Wow.
And we had over 200 pieces of art.
Wow.
And it was, I was a curator. We had initially a curator, but he backed out, so everybody voted me in to take care of it. And it taught me a lot about hanging and representation, talking about people. But it was a very successful show. Quite a few pieces sold. I wasn't still in contact, until a few years ago, of the artists that participated. And as far as I know, they're still creating to this day.
So what was your work like at that point?
At that time, I was really interested in capturing the landscapes because we were being developed so fast that all these old trees and poplars, things like that, were quickly disappearing. So, and I was a great admirer of Claude Monet at the time, and Pizarro, of course. So I was painting very much like that. But those quickly sold, and as I became more proficient at painting, of course, my imagination took off.
Sure. Now, I know you've always admired many of the European moderns of the early and mid 20th century, as well as some of the late 19th century artists as well. I mean, what did you do as an artist to kind of fulfill that dream of being able to, not imitate, but certainly find further inspiration in their work?
Well, I mean, first I tried to copy them, and I was learning the strokes, and I was learning the paint combinations, I was learning how to prime my canvases, so I would read everything I could about their process. But what really helped was actually seeing them in person, and when I moved to Paris for 3 years, sometime in the middle to late 70s, I was there for 3 years, and I did my pilgrimage of all the sites and all the places that I could possibly think of to actually study and to talk to as many people who knew about these artists as possible. From there, I went on to Picasso and everybody else that was painting at the time, but also reading a lot, and that was very, very instrumental in my development.
Reading what?
I would read, Mondrian's books. I would read.
I see.
So anybody. Let's see. shoot, I can't remember the names right now.
But I mean, were you looking for like their philosophies?
Absolutely. I was looking at the way they developed
Right.
their styles, what they did on a daily basis, their work habits.
There was a discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and reading about how they overcame difficulties as far as feeding themselves and,
Sure.
and maybe even some addictions.
Yeah. It's ironic, actually, that, that today they are seen as these iconic figures, but of course in their day, they literally were, in many cases anyway, starving.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, they found anything they could do to make a buck and keep buying the materials.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So besides, I mean, I see a wide spectrum of influences in your work. Besides the European moderns, I mean, specifically, of course, people like Monet or Picasso or Matisse or whomever. I mean, who else were inspiration for you?
It changed over the period of time. The abstract expressionists, the Dadaists, all the isms that existed in art. For me, it's always trying to find how to express a feeling and using the same materials that they did, but only maybe saying it in a little different way. And that was the great experiment and the studies that I was working on. Not worrying much about anything else but my own dialogue with the materials. So.
Okay. What kind of materials do you typically like to use? Because I see a lot of different things in your work. I mean, I see you using collage. I see you using certainly paper. You're a master of oil painting.
Yeah, so I use anything I can to get my point across, but I like sometimes the tension. I like the spontaneity of adding paper and putting oil on that. One of my favorite is to paint with oil on paper, rag paper, because it does something to me viscerally that really pumps me up.
And lots of times, pardon me for interrupting, but I mean, in a lot of your work, I see kind of this romantic sensibility, like in the diptych behind us, with the dancing figures, or a couple of others like Crescent Lake. And then on the other hand, I see other paintings of yours that have a very aggressive type of approach to them. And I'm just wondering, like, where do these two seemingly diametrically opposed, sensibilities come from?
Well, they exist within me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how I'm feeling and what I'm fighting against. I always said that there's a battle going up in my studio. And
nobody yourself?
Absolutely. Nobody knows about the battle. It's a
Yeah.
constant battle. It's not something I do for relaxation.
Sure.
And it's a constant struggle. Some come easier than others, but I believe in inspiration, but it has to find you working. And you have to develop that process of working every day, no matter what. No matter what's going on in your life, you need to continue to create.
Yeah, the best artists that I've ever known are people that really have pretty much a 9-to-5 sensibility in terms of discipline and rigor. I mean, regardless of whether what they're creating is what they consider to be wonderful or not, the bottom line is that they are working every single day.
Absolutely. So, so developing that was a hard thing for me. I had to get over certain ideas of how things were. I had to get over the negativity of money and things like that were, talked about to me when I was young. And now I believe in abundance, not in abundance of, say, making a lot of, hoarding a lot of money, but if I can live on, $10,000 a year and I bring in $1 million, that means I have that additional funds to maybe start a, foundation, to start helping other artists, with certain things, so I can share and become of service to people in my business. So that's what really works for me.
Coming from LA and now living in the Northwest, and how long have you been living in the Northwest?
Since 97.
97.
Yes.
So about, what's that, 21 years or so?
Yeah.
Okay, so has your work changed during that time?
Absolutely. As I become more concentrated and able to concentrate to a high level without interruptions, things like that, I actually go deeper and truer with my process. I tend to get bored with doing the same thing over and over again, so I have at least 3 to 4 painters progressing at one time.
Is there something about the Northwest that you find of inspiration versus other parts of the country, or for that matter, even Europe or the South Pacific where you've lived?
It doesn't now with my work habit. It doesn't really matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I was in France, France seems to be a place where I can finish my thoughts, and that's always helped me because it's slower there.
France is a place where you can finish your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
John, tell us a little bit about Man Distracted, because this has been a very prominent piece in the gallery that a lot of people have found themselves deeply attracted to.
This is a painting where I was thinking about, and I was reading quite a few books on the process of concentration. I talked to a few very successful people about what are the things that are missing from today's society, and that's the ability to concentrate. So I really wanted to show visually what distraction looks like.
Oh.
And it's almost like you're only partially there, and in some cases you're getting totally lost, and then you fight to get back into, paying attention to the now. So that was a piece that really felt strongly in my development.
That's interesting, because it's always reminded me of almost like a time lapse.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I wanted to show, and I think I captured it pretty well.
Yeah, it's a great painting. This again is one of those really aggressive pieces that I see you really work the surface of the panel.
Yeah, there was a lot of different colors. This is, I think it's a mixed media with acrylic and house paint and oil paint and oil stick, and just working it constantly. I think it was a series I did. I think this might be one of the last ones, but I really enjoyed working on it, although it wasn't always fun to actually work on it.
Sure. Well, that's often the case when you're working through things, right?
Absolutely.
That's the challenge of it.
Yeah.
So what about the dancing diptych?
The dancing diptych, I really wanted something that, because I loved to dance as a kid, we all love to dance, but something I don't do nowadays.
Yeah, you used to be quite a dancer.
Yeah. So, but I really like the emotion. I really love the idea of the popper, Charlie Chaplin, when he would move on the screen, and I really enjoyed that. And the other ballet dancers that I really admired. I always wanted to capture that intensity and that action. Some people have even talked about it like it's a football player, catching something. But so there's a lot of attention to, and it was done with scraping, and that has multiple mediums. I think it's house paint, oil paint, and oil stick.
Yeah, there's a wonderful sense of motion and frankly even sweetness to it, because you're not really sure whether these are two equal partners or if it's an adult and a child, but there's a really nice sense of color and movement, and the brushwork is really fabulous. I love what you did here. You're right, it was scraping. It was a lot of scraping.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like working on wood panels, is they can actually put up with a lot of abuse. So,
That's important for an artist, putting up with a lot of abuse.
It is.
And then what about like the Crescent Lake series, the Red Canoe?
The Red Canoe. So that was Crescent. If anybody's been to Crescent Lake, I highly recommend it.
And that's in Washington.
That is Washington, and the colors is what struck me in that painting and the actual lake. But as I was painting it, something kept telling me it was Mother Nature. This is Mother Nature. It just kept talking to me, and I knew it wasn't going to be a representation of a landscape or a lakescape, that it was going to be something more. And by the time I started to finish it, I actually just drew in the figure, and it really brought it to the point where I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it has a really nice surrealist sensibility to it because
yeah.
of the way you drew the figure, and you really don't even see the figure at first.
No.
You're taken by the planes of color, and then ultimately you see the outline, the lines that you drew into the figure. particularly the feet, is when I all of a sudden went, oh my God,
Yeah. That's right.
he's got a figure in
Yeah.
there. I love that.
Yeah.
Great. So John, I really want to thank you for coming in and doing this interview. I'm sure that people who are watching this really appreciate it and getting further insights into who you are as an artist as well as a human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been more than a pleasure to share what I do with everyone, and I hope they come in and see the original work.
And that's really what's most important, is that,
Absolutely.
I mean, all the words notwithstanding, that they actually come in and see the work in person and enjoy it, and maybe if they're so motivated to actually add something to their personal collection, right?
That would be excellent.
That would be excellent, yes. Well, thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
I really want to thank you, and I'm really looking forward to representing your
Thank
work
you
here
so
at the
much.
gallery in Seattle.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank the viewers for taking the time to watch this. I hope you really enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I'm sure John did too. And I really want to also take the opportunity to invite you into the gallery to see John's work, even if it's not on the wall, because I do have rotating shows. Please stop in and just say, hey, I saw your video, and would you be kind enough maybe to pull out one of the paintings that I saw? Because I always keep these things in storage. So just a word to the wise. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.